From the 1011 Now streaming studio in Lincoln, Nebraska, this is the REPORT Husker Show.
Hello, everyone. Bill Rentschler in the 1011 Now streaming studio, joined alongside, as always, by sports director Kevin Sjuts. Kevin, we last talked last week on Tuesday. Since then, we are now in off-season for football, as they lost to Iowa, and postseason volleyball with the Huskers getting the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament. So, a lot happened between now and when we last talked.
Yeah, and we'll start with the fresh stuff. And Matt Rhule holding a news conference on Wednesday, just kind of looking back at 2023 and looking ahead to 2024. Even though the season is done, it's a busy time for the head coach. He said on multiple occasions he's on to year 2, so as much as fans are probably still feeling the sting of a walk-off loss to Iowa in a month of November that got away from Nebraska.
A winless month of November.
0-4. They had 4 shots at trying to gain bowl eligibility. And what did Rhule say? It was soul-crushing, the fact that this team is not in the postseason. Because they were close, the 5 wins in a perfect October. They had a perfect October, which set up 5 wins and 4 tries of bowl eligibility. And we don't need to go back and unpack everything that happened in November. Just a series of unfortunate things. And Matt Rhule even said today that he doesn't buy the whole metric that Nebraska is an unlucky team. They just need to get better.
Yeah.
And he's doubling down on the process. And, some fans, I don't know how they would receive some of the comments that were spoken on Wednesday inside the Hawks Championship Center. Maybe they'd want a little more fire and frustration from the coach, but this is a program rebuilder we're talking to. He has done this before, and it takes some of the emotion out of it. And that's one of my biggest takeaways from the 30 minutes with the media was, he's a little bit upset that he's more than a little bit. He's a lot of it upset they're not preparing for a bowl game right now, but it's not going to change his attitude, and it's not going to change the way in which he operates. 5 wins in year 1 for Matt Rhule. If you look at his previous rebuilds with Baylor and Temple, that's a pretty good first year.
Mm-hmm. And he even went so far as to say that he actually thought the team was lucky to win 5 games with a minus 17 turnover margin. So, he
pointed toward the football.
Yeah.
And he cited those being the reasons for why they're not in a bowl game, not
controlling their own controllables.
And I mean, you can look at a lot of different things, clock management and the injury situation, but you just don't get the spirit of pity from the program. Instead, it's, all right, well, we got a lot of young guys, good reps, good action this year, and let's move it forward. Let's figure out who's going to be on the team in 2024, and let's get to work with winter conditioning. And it sounds like most of the team, the players that are eligible to come back, are going to come back.
We heard Ty Robinson last week announce that he was coming back. It sounds like Nash Hutmacher is going to be back. Rhule today made it sound like Ben Scott is coming back. There's still some players that, we're waiting on decisions. Isaac Gifford, Bryce Benhart, some players like that. Rhule did say today that wide receiver Ty Hahn, defensive lineman Blaze Gunnarsson, I think are moving on at this point. Portal opens, I think, on Friday.
Monday.
There will be plenty of roster attrition, undoubtedly. But how much, because the Rhule even kind of talked about it. He has a little bit of a roster squeeze. They got a big incoming recruiting class. They got to eventually get back down to 85 scholarships.
If they were going to take on a bunch of transfers, then you're in a really tricky spot. Because then what do you do, pull scholarships from some of the younger players? No, that's why they signed with Nebraska. That's why they're in their program. They're scholarship guys. So, Ramir Johnson is coming back.
Yeah.
He's a scholarship player.
Yeah.
There's a chance that they may even try to petition to get Marcus Washington another year. Again, that's if he comes back, that's a scholarship that you have to account for.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can go around and hand a bunch of flyers out and just say, come play for Nebraska, come play for Nebraska. It's not going to work that way because they have so many freshmen, redshirt freshmen, and just underclassmen on the team that they're not going to show them the door either. Matt Rhule likes the guys that he has, and he wants to continue to develop him. Again, this is all spoken as a program builder. And Matt Rhule even went so far to say about the whole managing the roster that he's never going to show the guy the door. He's not going to tell somebody to leave.
If they want to leave, won't start, but
yeah, he'll tell them they won't start, and then it's that person's choice. But he's not going to force anybody out of the program. And it speaks a lot to the integrity of Matt Rhule, because he says that he wants to make sure the way he manages the team during the offseason, it is consistent with what he said in recruiting when he was in a recruit's living room and he was telling mom and dad, this is what we're going to do. And part of that pitch is going to be, we're going to love on your kid. We're going to help develop their character. We're going to care for them. And if you're just going to open the door and say, there you go, hit the bricks, like, that's not caring for somebody. So character really comes into play here, and I think it's fascinating because, 5 days after the Iowa game, a lot of fans, their minds go straight to, well, who can we go get? Let's add from the portal. But you don't recognize the internal issues that maybe bring on. Not to mention the financial implications. Matt Rhule saying that if you're to get a quarterback from the portal, the price tag is $1 million, $1.5 million, and he mentioned $2 million.
And I think most people probably know that. I thought it was just really interesting to hear the head coach say it. He said that. I was listening, and I was kind of like, yeah, I mean, that probably makes sense, but I don't think I've ever heard, at least previously, coaches here say something like that.
Well, I don't think we've heard any coaches say it because it's still so new, and I think that the dollar sign continues to move. I presume that this is to go get a good quarterback.
Yes.
This isn't bringing somebody in from the FCS, and this isn't bringing somebody from, a program that's below the group of 5.
Yes.
This is, okay, so Oregon adds Bo Nix this year, right? I think we now have a clear picture of how much Oregon maybe threw at Bo Nix to get him there.
Yeah.
And not to mention, maybe we have a better idea of how much money Jeff Sims is making in NIL because he came last year from Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
Now, people that are watching and listening to this, let's not just jump to conclusions and say, well, he wasn't worth the investment. I think that's fair to say.
Yes.
Because you invested in a quarterback who came in from the portal and he wasn't starting midway through the year. There were just some football issues that held him back. And if the investment, if you invest in something, you want the return. But Matt Rhule did go so far to say that he doesn't regret adding Jeff Sims to the team this year. And of course, he and everybody else is disappointed that there wasn't the on-field production that they thought there was going to be. But again, Matt Rhule is not going to shame Jeff Sims. He's not going to shame the staff and the evaluators that went after him. He's going to take the high road here.
And I think, like you said, the on-field production wasn't there. I think Jeff Sims was probably one of the best teammates on that team this year. Obviously this season did not go how Jeff Sims wanted it to go. But you never saw him complain in the media or on social media. All the little hype videos the football team would put out. It was always, he was one, always visible. And two, he was always looked like he's having a good time cheering on his teammates.
Okay, so I'll share a story. Maybe it's not completely applicable to the Jeff Sims situation, but I do know a situation several years ago when covering Nebraska football that a notable player on the team, despite a win late in the year, did not even stay on the field to celebrate with the team. He went straight to the locker room. And that's a player that was one of the faces of the program and somebody who had a very successful college career and even played professionally. So that's the instance of a player who did produce on the field. Jeff Sims, who didn't produce on the field and now has the stigma of being a transfer quarterback who got to cash in from coming here, but yet didn't fulfill the football portion of the bargain. Yet he was the one putting his arm around Chubba Purdy after the Iowa game. And he was walking off the field with Heinrich Hoiberg after a loss in early November. Not to mention he was always on the sideline, involved in the game. Even though he wasn't playing, he was still trying to do everything right. And I think that's a part of the reason that Matt Rhule, would you say that Matt defended Jeff Sims?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think all year long, I don't think I've ever heard him not defend Jeff Sims, both as a person and as even a player.
I know Joe Husker fan out in name your small town Nebraska wouldn't do that.
No, absolutely not.
They're quick to criticize, quick to cast a lot of judgment on the way the quarterback situation played out this year, and also the selection of Jeff Sims of the available portal quarterbacks last year. We're going to have more on this coming up tonight on 1011 News at 6. We're going to kind of break down this situation with the quarterbacks, Heinrich Haarberg, Chubba Purdy. Matt's going to meet with Jeff Sims tomorrow, so he doesn't really have a gauge as to, Jeff
can come back for one more year.
Jeff can stay here.
Yeah.
And he's still got another year of eligibility.
I think he's graduating in December.
So we're going to unpack some of that coming up on the news tonight. But it's a big part of the discussion of Nebraska's offseason. If you're a fan and you're watching this or listening to this, if you think Nebraska is going to just simply go out and
throw money,
hook a quarterback, get him to come here, I think my takeaway after hearing from Matt Rhule on Wednesday, I would say, be careful. That's not a done deal. That is not necessarily how this is going to play out, because he praised Chubba Purdy, he praised Heinrich Haarberg, he defended Jeff Sims, and he shared the price tag of a portal quarterback.
It's one of those decisions. It's like, yeah, you could go out and spend $2 million on a portal quarterback, and I have no idea how that NIL operation works. But, I mean, could you fill 4 or 5 maybe other needs on your team with that NIL money? Could you go get?
Well, now we're talking like an NFL roster here.
We are
And the other thing, too, was Coach Rhule even mentioned that going out and finding a portal quarterback every year is bad business.
Oh, yeah.
You want to be able to get somebody that can stay in your program for multiple years and you can develop them. So, it's not like I don't even know what the right analogy would be here. It's not like Tom Brady all of a sudden becomes a free agent and you just go get him at all costs. No, in the college game, this is different. If you do that for just 1 year, then you're going to do it again the next year and the next year. And that really is opposite of the way Matt Rhule has had success in his rebuilds. He's done it by recruiting and developing players.
I think it is interesting, though, because you see a lot of these college players that maybe aren't a first rounder or second rounder that are coming back because of the NIL opportunities. And I think as we go forward in time, it's going to make college football really good, because you're going to have a lot of players that may get drafted 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round or whatever that are coming back to get even better, and you have that much more talent on rosters across the country. So I think that's maybe one of the
not to mention him again, Bo Nix, perfect example.
Yeah.
Like, he would have been drafted last year.
Oh, yeah.
He's a really good quarterback.
Probably going to win the Heisman.
Jaden Daniels. I think that's a done deal. He's going to go to the NFL.
Yes.
He's going to cash in, because I don't know if any NIL operation can match what Jaden Daniels is about to make going into the NFL. But, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there for Nebraska football. And, of course, the Huskers end the year 5-7. The bull drought continues. It's now at 7 years, which is just absolutely crazy to say out loud. A program with this much history, and the fact that, personally, I've been able to plan Christmas with my family in our travels without having to factor in a bowl game and when is bowl practice, when are we traveling for coverage, when is the game. I haven't had to worry about that for a few years.
I think one of probably the better, not 100% yet, things that we've kind of found out in the last couple days, I think Tony White's probably sticking around. The head coaching gigs that you would connect him to, Syracuse, San Diego State, looks like they're going in different directions.
Those were the two.
I think that's, it's great to get Ty Robinson back and all the other players, but to keep him for another year, I think is bigger than the players.
Yeah, and it doesn't sound like Matt Rhule is putting the press to try to convince Tony White to stay. If anything, he's telling Tony White, go be a head coach. Just make sure it's the right job. And that's something he said a week or two ago, not just today.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Matt Rhule has endorsed Tony White, and he knows that he's going to be a really good coach. And he also has confidence in that defense, whether Tony is the defensive coordinator next year or not. That group's going to be pretty solid again next year. I mean, that's going to be one of the best interior defensive lines in the Big Ten, if not the country. Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmaker, if that's A and B, my goodness, there are a lot of teams that would love to have those two guys starting up front.
Yeah, and you get another year of development for players like Cam Lenhart, Princewell Uman-Yellen. I think that's the first time I've ever said his last name.
Uman-Yellen.
Oh, okay, I thought I got it right. But in all the young players that you saw
James
play.
Williams, Riley Van
redshirted,
Poppel,
Kai Wallen,
yeah,
Ethan Nation, DeAndre Barnes. A lot of good players.
I mean, we could spend 2 minutes just listing players that Nebraska played that are either true freshmen or redshirt freshmen that got valuable time this year, and they didn't burn a redshirt year this year. I mean, there's some exceptions. You know, Jalen Lloyd. What's the stat? Did you hear this? Jalen Lloyd has as many 50-plus yard catches as Marvin Harrison Jr.
50-yard touchdown catches. 3.
That is wild.
I know.
And
he
Jalen
didn't
Lloyd
play
really
half the
didn't.
season.
Yeah, Jalen Lloyd did not play until midway through the year. He was still trying to figure out which way to turn to get in the locker room, trying to figure out which class he's supposed to be attending, and trying to learn the playbook. And all of a sudden, I mean, speed wins, right?
Yes, it does. And I mean, again, the offense was what the offense was this year. But again, all the players that went down at the beginning of the year: Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, Marcus Washington, Gabe Irvin, Ramir Johnson. You potentially get Marcus Washington back. I think Isaiah Garcia Castaneda might be trying to come back for another year too. And then you add a player like Jalen Lloyd, Malachi Coleman, who now have a year under their belt. That could be You could
listen to the positivity emanate through the airwaves here. Because there are some things
where the jump could be next year. You can see it.
And that's where sometimes time always heals, right? When you're close to a last-second loss, you're just so emotional, and sometimes the blinders are kind of on. But as time passes, you can start to see, all right, well, if this is the foundation, it's a pretty good foundation because there are a number of players who got very valuable experience this year, and it should pay off next year. What did Rhule say? That he thinks the close losses this year are going to turn into close wins in year number 2.
Yep. And so I think we'll find out a lot more in the next month with the portal. Early signing day is also next week, I believe.
It's in mid-December.
Mid-December. They have 26, I think, commits in their class now. So I think if we did this a month from now, to say December 29th, I think, one, we find out if there's going to be a transfer portal quarterback.
Yes, it's
that's
tough
coming
to say.
in.
Portal quarterback.
Yeah. And then, two, you're going to have a lot of players have signed their national letters of intent, too. So we'll be interesting to see what the state of the roster looks like a month from now.
I'm really curious on Monday. I mean, this is going to tell folks a lot. How many players transfer? Because we're already seeing, the regular season ended just a few days ago. You know how many guys have entered the transfer or announced that they are entering the portal?
A lot.
I mean, Michigan State had 2 quarterbacks enter the portal on the same day.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just seeing a number of guys, and some that raise eyebrows. Arkansas's quarterback's in the portal. Will Howard at Kansas State is in the portal. Like, there are just a number of players from various programs. They're all going, like, what's it going to look like? I haven't seen much Nebraska on that front at all.
Not a one. Not
okay,
yet.
So if all these players want to stay at Nebraska, what does that say about the locker room and the culture with Matt Rhule?
It's good.
They like it here.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to leave now.
Yeah.
It doesn't win you games, but it's important to winning games in the future.
Would rather have this, situation versus, again, a situation, just to pull it off the top of my head because I just read an article about it. But again, Deion Sanders in Colorado, who sounds like they're struggling a little bit and having decommits and players transferring and things like that. All Big Ten awards were announced yesterday. Today, the only player to make it first, second, or third team was Luke Reimer. He made third team All Big Ten. A number of honorable mentions: Isaac Gifford, Quentin Newsome, Tommy Hill, Omar Brown, Nash Hutmacher, Ty Robinson, Bryce Benhart, Ben Scott. Anyone you think maybe should have been on that list?
Ty Robinson.
I think so, too.
I mean, Ty Robinson should be an All Big Ten accolade-winning player.
Probably
and
comes
I think
down
Quentin
more to
Newsome would be the other pick, too, for me.
If they would have won a few more games, they probably would have been.
What did Matt Rhule say? To the victor gets the spoils?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think he even acknowledged that, if Nebraska maybe wins a few more games, places a little bit higher in the Big Ten West, maybe the individual selections changes a little bit. I'm not surprised about offense. The fact that they only had a couple of honorable mention players listed. Nobody landed on first, second, or third team. I mean, Let's not be surprised by that.
No.
Look at the offense in total. And not to mention, there was no player on offense that was, one, healthy the whole season, two, productive every single game on the schedule.
Yeah. So, not surprising there. I've said it before with you, Kevin, but the turnaround from Tommy Hill from last year going to being benched, being basically booted out of the cornerback room to go play wide receiver, to flipping back to playing both this year and being Big Ten honorable mention. Pretty impressive.
That is pretty great. He led the team in interceptions, finished with 4 this year, and Tommy Hill did have a really nice year.
He did. And I think he'll be back.
back.
Yeah, so he'll be back next year. So moving on from football, volleyball got swept by Wisconsin at Wisconsin. Disappointing to see that. Disappointing to see the undefeated season go by the wayside. But number one, no,
it's a good thing.
You think so?
I really do.
I think I would agree with you.
The pressure of having the undefeated season, that could weigh on them as they go through the postseason. I really think that, and there was no harm done in losing at Wisconsin. In fact, there might have been something to gain from it because Wisconsin now lands on the opposite side of the bracket as Nebraska. Had Nebraska handed Wisconsin another loss, would that have been 4 on the year, 4 or 5, they could have possibly been on the same side of the bracket as Nebraska. That's what the Huskers did not want. Yeah. And Wisconsin has a really challenging road to the Final Four. In their regional, they have Penn State and Purdue, teams that they have lost to this year. And Nebraska, conversely, obviously they open up this week at home against Long Island, and then they will play the winner of Delaware and Missouri. Should the Huskers clear that hurdle, which I think we all can assume they will, they're just the better team. They're the number 1 seed in the tournament. Then you look at even who would be coming here for regional play, and I don't know that it is all that daunting for the Huskers. Florida, Georgia Tech is a possibility, and Kentucky. Nebraska has already defeated Kentucky in Lincoln this year.
Yeah, you have to like their road to the Final Four. And again, if they were to meet Wisconsin, it would be a repeat of the 2021 championship with where Wisconsin is on that side of the bracket. They would meet potentially in the finals. So that first match is on Friday at 7 p.m., and then the second round will be on Saturday, also at 7 p.m. at Devaney. Both of those games are on ESPN+. So I was looking today. I haven't seen. Do you know when regular season awards for the Big Ten will be announced?
They will be tomorrow. That's on Thursday that they are going to announce those. Of course, there's going to be a chance Merritt Beeson would be Big Ten Player of the Year. I don't know that she will.
Could be Sarah Franklin.
It's likely going to be Sarah Franklin, but I think Merritt would probably place second if they release the placing of everybody. Lexi Rodriguez has the potential to be the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. I don't know that she will, but of course she's got to be in contention. And then Bergen Riley has a legit possibility of being both the Big Ten Setter of the Year and the Big Ten Freshman of the Year.
Very impressive for a... Again, John Cook never says the freshman, but they played so many freshmen this year. So super impressive by John Cook and his staff. And again, another great season. That first match, again, Friday at Bob Devaney, 7 p.m., Long Island University. Do you know what their nickname is, the Long Island University?
Sharks.
The Sharks. All right. So then
I had to build a graphic on Sunday night, so that's the reason I know.
You knew.
The LIU Sharks, which has a sub-500 record. I believe they're 13-18 overall. And this would maybe highlight they won their conference tournament as the 4 seed. That's how they got into the NCAA tournament. And that's why they are playing the number 1 overall seed. Their athletics website did not even have them winning the conference championship posted on Sunday night. When you do the quick search of, let me learn a little bit about Long Island. You couldn't really find much volleyball coverage on the university's own webpage.
All right, well, the Sharks on Friday for the Huskers. Really quickly, basketball.
They could go from the Sharks to the Hens.
They could. Delaware Hens. Joining Conference USA, by the way. Mm-hmm. Good for them. Moving on to basketball real quick. The women's team, Amy Williams and the women's team, 4-2 record. They lost to TCU, I think. They were down in Florida for a tournament. They went 1-1 down there. But they're 4-2 on the year.
They play tonight.
Tonight against Florida Atlantic, 7 p.m. tip. That game's on Big Ten Plus. And then Saturday they host Georgia Tech, which is the You Betcha roller giveaway day, I believe. So if you need a You Betcha roller, shout out to Matt Coatney. that's the day to get it. In terms of basketball news, the men generating some excitement. 7-0, best start since I think is 92, 93 for Fred Hoiberg and the men, and receiving votes in the AP Top 25 poll.
Careful. Don't say receiving votes
There was
plural.
4 of them.
No.
There wasn't?
It was one individual who voted Nebraska, and he put him at 22. So you get 4 points.
Oh, okay.
So really, Nebraska basketball received
1 vote.
1 vote. It was not 25. It was 22.
Okay.
So though you see the number 4 on the other teams receiving votes, it was really 4 points for the 1 vote placed at 22.
See, I did not know this. So you're teaching me things, Kevin.
Well,
I
as
appreciate
an AP voter, I'm glad I can enlighten you a little bit on how this process works.
As an AP
I always love to see who are the other teams receiving votes. It's fascinating to me because
sometimes you end up with some random team in there.
Yeah, Bradley received a vote 2 weeks ago, so all of a sudden my interest peaks up a little bit in the Missouri Valley. And then there are sometimes the others receiving votes, Memphis, Mississippi State, even though they're ranked right now, just lost last night. Michigan State's not ranked. They're in the others receiving votes. You get kind of a gauge of those other teams that are on the fringe that definitely couldn't hang with most of the teams within the top 25.
So what have you, I mean, what's your takeaway, Ben, with this start from Hoiberg's squad? I mean, I know you're tuned into the basketball as a voter.
They're winning, they're scoring, and I feel like the team has pretty good chemistry, which is maybe a little surprising to me. Not that I doubt Coach Hoiberg and that staff, but I just feel like with some of the pieces that came in, I mean, it's tough to get guys from experience. You know, Rink Mass played in the Missouri Valley, and Bryce Williams played in Conference USA, and you have Casey, and then you have some walk-ons who are playing some valuable minutes, and Jawan Gary's coming off the injury, so they have a little bit of a mishmash roster. But so far, I feel like they've been pretty in sync, especially considering early in the year they were dealing with some injuries and they didn't have pretty much everybody available to kind of get a feel for how this was all going to look. I mean, they even played overseas this summer. They had one game, they had 7 guys available to play. Boogie Coleman's from the SEC, played in Missouri. So, again, they just have a bunch of different pieces, but I'm surprised at how in sync they are right now. And they're scoring at a pretty good clip at this moment. You got to reserve some judgment right now, though. 7-0 is nice. But right now their toughest competition has been Duquesne, and that changes Sunday when they play Creighton. And then the following week they'll play Michigan State. So enjoy it. I'm not saying that it's going to end. I think Nebraska can be competitive with Creighton, but you're going to learn a lot. And that's why, the bandwagon for Nebraska basketball is not bursting at the seams right now, because I think a lot of people are pretty cautious, but wins are wins. And if you think about this, 7-0, what's the magic number to get into the NCAA tournament?
20?
People just automatically say 20. They're a third of the way there. So if Nebraska remains competitive in the Big Ten and stays around the 500 mark, given the fact that they already have 7 non-con wins, that's going to help get you to the 20-win mark. And it could put the Huskers on the bubble on Selection Sunday. And,
I mean, I don't know how many years you can go back. A 7-game stretch like this, they were losing a game to an Incarnate Word or some team like that where it's like, how did you lose that game? So, yes, they haven't really played anyone, all that great. But they, like you said, wins are wins. You have Juwan Gary, he's averaging 16 points a game. Rink Mast is averaging a double-double. He's been impressive to see.
He leads the team in scoring right now with 103 points.
Keisei Tominaga is actually not leading the team in three-point percentage. Bryce Williams shooting 42% from behind the arc. Keisei, though, shooting 40%.
And I think some of these additions are really going to take some pressure off of Keisei. Of course, he's still going to chuck up some shots. He's going to pull up from 28 feet, and that's just part of his game. He's going to make some. He's going to miss some.
Yeah.
But I think as teams started to really clamp down on Keisei late in the season last year, put a lot of defensive focus on him, if you do that, you're going to have to maybe give up a little bit against Bryce Williams. I think he's a really nice ball player. So there's just more options offensively with this team than I can remember from previous years.
The one thing I've really noticed, especially the last couple games, and I feel like it's something that's really hurt the Huskers a lot the last 10 years, their free throw shooting has been really good.
19 of 20 on Sunday.
And I think they're shooting almost 75% for the season, but there's been so many games where they would shoot 50% or 60%, and you look at the final score, and it's like, well, there's the difference, is the free throws.
Right.
So, and like you said, we'll learn a lot over their next 4 games. Creighton at home on Sunday, 3 p.m. That game's on FS1. Next Wednesday, they're at Minnesota, open Big Ten play, and then they host Michigan State on Sunday. Then they have a week off, and they go to Kansas State. Kansas State team that, were they a Final Four team last year?
They went to the Elite Eight last year.
So, a lot.
But they had a lot of turnover. They're not quite the team they were last year, but they're still pretty good.
Yes.
But again, you're looking at, I guess I should correct myself, their toughest opponent so far was Oregon State, and they ran them off the court in Sioux Falls. But if you compare the teams you just stated to Oregon State and Duquesne, I mean, this is the science lab where the scale completely one side is higher than the other. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it'll be an exciting next couple weeks there for Husker basketball, both men's and women's. And really quickly, I'll just again give a shout out to the women's soccer team. They did fall to Stanford in overtime in the Elite Eight, but awesome season for that squad, and kudos to them for all their hard work this year. So anything else we want to add before we let everyone go?
No, I'm really excited for the volleyball tournament to start on Friday. They should have 4 more matches at home at the Devaney Center, and that's always fun. It happens quickly, but the fact that there is more volleyball at the Devaney, that's exciting. Not to mention this weekend, but
next weekend
hosting a regional, that's special. Mm-hmm. And that hasn't happened since 2016. And I can remember the times Nebraska did host for regionals. When you're playing on your own floor for a chance to go to the Final Four, it's electric. There's just a great energy about it. We don't know when that match would be. They kind of all set those based on who's all playing that day. But I look forward to a week from Saturday if Nebraska is playing for a spot in the Final Four.
Remind me, they swap out their court for like just a generic NCAA court, don't they?
I don't know that they do.
I
know they can't turn off the lights and do the light show. They can't do the introductions where they throw the balls into the crowd. Some of the Nebraska home venue things, they cannot do that. You will see some NCAA signage all around the facility. But I do believe it's still going to be a Nebraska court just with an NCAA logo on it.
Cool. And I think we'll hear from Cook and maybe a couple players on Thursdays.
Correct. 5 o'clock.
Look for that, again, on 1011's platforms online, and then obviously on air as well with Kevin's End Report at 6 and 10 on Thursday night. So, all right. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for hopping in and joining me today. Everyone, thanks for tuning in and listening. As always, keep it tuned to 1011 both on air and online for all of your latest news, weather, and sports. Hope everyone has a nice Wednesday.
You've been listening to the REPORT Husker Show from 1011. Watch, listen, and stream on the 1011 Now app, on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more Husker coverage throughout the week, watch the REPORT on 1011 Sports at 6 and 10 p.m. and download the 1011 Now app.